I'm Lucy, 30 female. I live in a small but comfortable apartment near the university, a place filled with more books than furniture. For the last 6 years, my life has been a blur of research, late-night lab sessions, and the relentless pursuit of a single goal. Just last month, I successfully defended my dissertation and officially became Dr. Lucy Vance, a PhD in cellular biology. This story is about how the culmination of my life's work was met with silence by my family, while my cousin's engagement was treated like a national holiday, and how that painful silence led me to uncover a truth that changed everything. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Growing up, my family had an unwritten rule. Accomplishments were only valuable if they were visible, understandable, and most importantly, Instagrammable. A new car, a vacation to an exotic beach, a designer handbag, these were things to be celebrated. My world, a place of microscopes, peer-reviewed journals, and complex protein interactions, was none of those things. It was quiet, internal, and to my family, utterly baffling. My parents were decent people, but they were simple in their worldview. They ran a successful local hardware store and believed in tangible results. You build a deck, you can stand on it. You sell a lawnmower, you have cash in the register. The concept of spending years researching a microscopic process that might, one day, contribute to a cure for a disease was too abstract. They were proud in their own muted way, but they didn't know how to show it. The real center of the family's universe, however, was my Aunt Brenda and her daughter, my cousin Jessica. Aunt Brenda was a high-powered real estate agent who saw life as a series of transactions, each one designed to increase her social standing. Jessica, her only child, was her prized asset. She was beautiful, charming, and had spent her entire life being told she was destined for stardom. Her current ambition was to become an actress, which in practice meant she worked part-time as a barista while attending auditions for commercials. To Aunt Brenda, Jessica's life was a thrilling drama, full of potential for glamour and fame. My life, in comparison, was a boring textbook. The dynamic was established early. When I won the state science fair in high school with a project on genetic mutations in fruit flies, Aunt Brenda barely looked up from her phone. A week later, Jessica got a call back for a local theater production of Grease, and Brenda threw a catered dinner party for 20 people. My brother, Mark, was the only one who seemed to notice the disparity. He was 2 years older, an architect who appreciated the dedication and precision my work required. He was my quiet ally, the one who would text me, "Congratulations, future doctor," while the rest of the family was fawning over Jessica's latest headshot. This pattern continued for years. My bachelor's degree in biology was acknowledged with a card that had a $20 bill in it. My acceptance into a prestigious PhD program earned me a 3-minute phone call from my mom. Meanwhile, Jessica's weekend trip to Miami was documented in a family-wide photo album Brenda created online. Each milestone of mine was a quiet, personal victory. Each minor event in Jessica's life was a public spectacle. I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself that my work was its own reward. The thrill of a successful experiment, the quiet satisfaction of seeing my name on a published paper, these were things they could never understand, and that was okay. I was on a different path, one that valued substance over style, and I was proud of it. But even the most self-assured person has a breaking point. Mine came in the form of my PhD graduation. 6 years of relentless work, of sacrificing weekends and holidays, of pouring every ounce of my mental and emotional energy into my research. It was, without a doubt, the single greatest achievement of my life. I sent out a group text to the family a month in advance. "Hi everyone, just wanted to share the good news. I officially passed my dissertation defense and will be graduating with my PhD on May 15th. The ceremony is at 2 p.m. at the university auditorium. It would mean the world to me if you could be there." The responses trickled in slowly. My mom sent a thumbs-up emoji. My dad replied, "That's great, sweetie." Mark called me immediately, whooping with joy and promising to take the day off work to be there. From Aunt Brenda and Jessica, there was nothing, complete silence. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Brenda was busy with work, and Jessica was probably caught up in her own world. A week later, I sent a follow-up message with a link to the live stream, just in case they couldn't make it in person. Ag. Ain silence. The day of my graduation was bittersweet. Mark was there, beaming in the audience, holding a ridiculous bouquet of balloons shaped like beakers and DNA strands. He took me out for a fancy dinner afterward, where we toasted with champagne, and he told me how immensely proud of me he was. It was a wonderful evening, but I couldn't shake the hollow feeling in my chest. Not a single other family member had called, texted, or even acknowledged the day in any way. It was as if the most significant accomplishment of my life hadn't happened. I had become Dr. Lucy Vance, and the people who were supposed to be my biggest supporters hadn't even noticed. The invisibility was a cold, heavy blanket. I pushed it down, telling myself it didn't matter, that their validation wasn't what I worked for. But it did matter. It mattered a lot. 2 weeks after my silent graduation, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a mass email from Aunt Brenda with the subject line, "Huge news, you're invited." My heart, for a foolish moment, skipped a beat. Had she realized her mistake? Was this some kind of belated celebration for my PhD? I clicked open the email, my eyes scanning the text, and the hope evaporated, replaced by a familiar, sinking feeling of cold disappointment. The email was an elaborate, professionally designed invitation, complete with cursive fonts and stock photos of champagne glasses clinking. It was an announcement for an engagement party for my cousin, Jessica. Her boyfriend of 6 months, a personal trainer named Kyle, had proposed. The party was in 3 weeks, at a lavishly expensive country club that Brenda frequented to network with her wealthy real estate clients. The invitation detailed a formal dress code, a full catering menu, a live band, and a link to their extensive gift registry. It was a production, a gala event for a relationship that was younger than my last semester of research. I closed the email and stared at the wall of my apartment, at the framed diploma that was still leaning against the bookshelf, because I hadn't had the heart to hang it up yet. The contrast was so stark, so painfully clear, it felt like a slap in the face. 6 years of intellectual dedication, a terminal degree that put me at the pinnacle of my academic field, and it didn't warrant a single text message. 6 months of dating, a shiny ring, and they were renting out a country club. Mark called me a few hours later. His voice was tight with anger. "Did you see Brenda's email?" he asked, no preamble needed. "I saw it," I said, my own voice flat. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "Absolutely unbelievable. I swear, Lucy, sometimes I think we were adopted from a family of librarians and they were spawned from a reality TV show." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a choked sound. "It's fine, Mark, it is what it is." "No, it's not fine," he insisted. "It's insulting." A PhD is a massive achievement. It's a testament to years of hard work and brilliance. An engagement is, well, it's just a decision. A good one, hopefully, but it's not an accomplishment in the same league, not even in the same universe. He was right, of course, but hearing him say it only amplified the hurt. The family group chat, which had been silent for weeks, suddenly exploded with activity. Photos of Jessica's diamond ring, endless heart emojis, exclamation points, and fawning messages from distant relatives. "OMG JSSICA, so happy for you. That ring is gorgeous. Brenda, you must be so proud." My aunt was in her element, orchestrating the entire symphony of praise. She posted updates about the party planning, polls about color schemes for the floral arrangements, and anecdotes about how Kyle had secretly asked for her blessing. It was a masterclass in making a personal event a public performance. I felt like a ghost, watching a celebration for a world I didn't belong to. The painful part wasn't that they were celebrating Jessica. I was happy for her, truly. The painful part was the complete and utter erasure of my own achievement. It wasn't just that they didn't celebrate it. Their silence implied it had no value at all. My life's work was invisible to them. As the day of the party approached, my anxiety grew. I knew I had to go. Not going would be seen as petty and resentful, and would only give them more ammunition to paint me as the weird, antisocial academic. So, I bought a new dress, a simple but elegant navy blue sheath that felt woefully inadequate for the formal dress code, and prepared myself for an evening of forced smiles. The party was even more ostentatious than I had imagined. The country club ballroom was draped in white silk, with towering floral centerpieces on every table. A string quartet was playing in the corner, and waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. It was bigger and more expensive than many weddings I'd been to. Aunt Brenda, dripping in jewels, greeted me at the door with an air kiss that didn't quite make contact with my cheek. "Lucy, you made it. Isn't this just a fabulous night? My little girl is all grown up." She didn't ask how I was, what I was working on, or mention my graduation. It was as if the last 6 years of my life had been neatly snipped out of the family history. I found Mark by the bar, looking deeply uncomfortable in his suit. "Feel like we're at the Oscars for mediocrity," he murmured, handing me a glass of water. I smiled gratefully. "Something like that." We spent most of the night as a two-person island, observing the spectacle. Jessica floated through the room in a sparkling white dress, her hand permanently outstretched to show off her ring. She was radiant and happy, and I couldn't blame her for enjoying her moment. The fault didn't lie with her, but with the system of values our family had created, a system championed by her mother. The climax of the evening was the series of toasts. Brenda went first, of course, giving a long, tearful speech about her beautiful, talented daughter and the wonderful man who was finally making her an honest woman. My own parents gave a short, sweet toast, and then Brenda's husband, Uncle Robert, stood up. He raised his glass and said, "To Jessica and Kyle, and to Brenda for putting all of this together. It's so wonderful to finally have something truly worth celebrating in this family." And that was it. That was the line. Something truly worth celebrating. The words hung in the air, and for me, they landed like a punch to the gut. I looked at Mark, and his jaw was clenched. He saw that I had heard it, that I had understood the implication. All my work, my doctorate, my entire life's passion, it was nothing, not worth celebrating. In that moment, the hurt I had been suppressing for years curdled into something else. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was a cold, quiet, and utterly resolute anger. The rest of the party passed in a blur of forced politeness. I endured conversations about the wedding plans, the exorbitant cost of the venue, and Jessica's vague plans for an acting career after she got married. Each word felt like a tiny paper cut. I was an alien, a visitor from another planet where success was measured in data and discovery, not diamond carrots and catering menus. I excused myself to use the restroom, needing a moment of quiet to compose myself. The country club's hallways were long and carpeted, muffling the sounds of the party. As I walked back towards the ballroom, I heard voices coming from a small, private lounge area just off the main hall. The door was slightly ajar. I recognized the sharp, commanding tone of Aunt Brenda and the softer, more placating voice of my own mother. Curiosity, tinged with a self-destructive impulse, made me pause. I leaned closer, my back against the wall, and listened. "Honestly, Brenda, it's a beautiful party," my mom was saying. "You really outdid yourself." "Of course, Susan," Brenda replied, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "Jessica deserves the best. We have to show people that our family values real success, real milestones. A good marriage is the foundation of everything." There was a pause, and then my mom said, a little hesitantly, "I just feel a bit bad for Lucy. Her graduation—" Brenda cut her off with a sharp, dismissive laugh. "Oh, please. Don't be so soft. What is there to celebrate? She gets a piece of paper that says she's smart. Who cares? She's 30 years old, no boyfriend, no prospects. She spends all her time locked in a lab looking at germs. It's frankly a little weird." "This," she said, her voice rising with theatrical importance, "this is a real achievement. Jessica has secured her future with a wonderful man from a good family. She's doing what a woman is supposed to do. Lucy is just indulging a hobby." My mother's response was weak, a barely audible murmur. "Well, she worked very hard." "We all work hard, Susan," Brenda snapped. "But some of us work hard on things that actually matter. Things that build a family, that create a legacy. All Lucy is building is a mountain of student debt for a degree that's useless in the real world. I'm just glad someone in this family is setting a proper example." Every word was a hammer blow. Weird. Useless, indulging a hobby. This wasn't just a thoughtless oversight, This was a deliberate, contemptuous dismissal of my entire life. They didn't just not understand my work, they actively disdained it. They saw my independence and intellectual passion not as strengths, but as failings, as deviations from what a woman was supposed to do. The blood drained from my face. I felt dizzy, sick to my stomach. I backed away from the door slowly, my hands trembling, and retreated down the hallway. I didn't go back to the party. I found a side exit and slipped out into the cool night air, gulping it down like I had been holding my breath for hours. I walked across the perfectly manicured lawn, my heels sinking into the soft grass, and didn't stop until I reached my car. I drove home on autopilot, the cruel words echoing in my head. Back in my apartment, I finally let myself break. I sank onto my couch, and the tears I had been holding back for weeks finally came, hot and furious. It wasn't just about the party anymore. It was about a lifetime of being minimized, of having my passions treated as oddities, of being made to feel that my intelligence was a liability rather than an asset. It was the realization that to a significant part of my family, I was a failure. The anger that had sparked inside me at the toast now roared into a full-blown fire, but it wasn't a destructive fire. It was focused. It was the kind of fire that forges steel. Brenda had talked about legacy, about things that actually matter. She thought a legacy was about marrying well and throwing expensive parties. I was about to show her what a real legacy looked like. My mind, trained for years to solve complex problems, to find patterns and connect disparate pieces of information, started to work. The initial sting of their words began to fade, replaced by a cold, clear sense of purpose. My greatest strength, the one they saw as my biggest weakness, was my intellect. My ability to research, to analyze, to see things others missed. Brenda and her superficial world were built on a foundation of appearances. I wondered what would happen if I started digging beneath the surface. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about how to win their approval. I was thinking about how to show them, in a language they could not possibly ignore, the true meaning of value. The revenge I was contemplating wouldn't be loud or petty. It wouldn't be a shouting match or a dramatic confrontation. It would be quiet, precise, and devastatingly effective. It would use the very skills they dismissed as useless to dismantle the shallow world they held so dear. The first step was to understand the landscape. Brenda's entire identity was tied up in money and social status. That seemed like a good place to start digging. My grief was over. My investigation was about to begin. The morning after the party, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The emotional fog of hurt and resentment had burned away, leaving behind a sharp, analytical focus. My target was Aunt Brenda's carefully constructed empire of social prestige, and my tools were research and data analysis. I started with a simple question. How could Brenda afford a party that, by my conservative estimate, must have cost upwards of $30,000? She was a successful real estate agent, yes, but not a superstar. My uncle's salary as a mid-level manager at a logistics company was solid but not extravagant. Throwing that kind of money at an engagement party seemed reckless, a classic case of prioritizing appearances over financial sense. It suggested that their finances might be more fragile than they appeared. My first port of call was public records. As a real estate agent, Brenda's name was attached to property transactions all over the county. I spent a weekend digging through online databases, cross-referencing sales records with property tax assessments. A pattern began to emerge. Brenda was good at selling houses, but her real talent was in flipping properties she bought herself. However, her recent flips showed a worrying trend, decreasing profit margins. The housing market had been cooling, and a couple of her recent projects had barely broken even after renovation costs. She was maintaining the illusion of success, but the numbers told a different story. The foundation of her wealth was shakier than she let on. This discovery was interesting, but it wasn't the smoking gun I was looking for. I needed something more personal, something that connected directly to the family's value system. My mind turned to my late grandmother, my mom and Brenda's mother. Grandma Aliner had been a quiet, formidable woman. A high school science teacher, she was the one who had first sparked my interest in biology. She had been my biggest champion, the only one in the family who truly understood my academic ambitions. When she passed away 5 years ago, she left a modest inheritance to be split between her two daughters. I remembered discussions at the time about a small portfolio of stocks and the family home, which was sold. My mother used her share to pay off their mortgage and put the rest into a retirement fund. Brenda, I recalled, had talked vaguely about investing her portion in her business. This was the thread I needed to pull. My grandmother had also set up small educational trust funds for each of her grandchildren, me, Mark, and Jessica. They weren't huge, but they were meant to be used for college or a down payment on a house. Mark had used his for architecture school. I had used mine to help cover living expenses during my unpaid PhD internships. Jessica, as far as I knew, had never touched hers. I decided to talk too. Mark, I met him for coffee, laying out what I had heard and what I had discovered so far. He listened intently, his expression growing darker with each detail. I knew Brenda was obsessed with appearances, but I never thought she'd be so cruel, he said, shaking his head. And to say that about your work, it's just vile. It was a wake-up call, I replied calmly. But I need your help. Do you remember anything about Grandma's will, specifically about the trust funds? Mark frowned in concentration. I remember Dad helping Mom with the paperwork. He said Grandma had set it up with her old family lawyer, a Mr. Abernathy. He's retired now, but his firm is still downtown. Why? I have a hunch, I said. Brenda's finances seem strained. That party was an act of desperation, a way to project success she might not actually have. I want to know what happened to her half of the inheritance, and more importantly, I want to confirm that Jessica's trust fund is still intact. Mark agreed it was worth looking into. As Grandma's grandchildren, we had a right to inquire about the status of the trusts she had established for our benefit. He made a call to his father, who confirmed the name of the law firm. The next day, I made an appointment, citing a need to review my own trust disbursement records. At the firm, I was met by a junior partner, a young woman named Ms. Davies. I explained that I was Dr. Lucy Vance, Aleener's granddaughter, and that I wanted to review the family trust documents. She was professional and accommodating. She pulled the thick file, and we sat down in a quiet conference room. I scanned through my own records first. They were all in order, showing the withdrawals I had made over the years. Then I asked, I was also hoping to see the records for my cousin, Jessica. My aunt is her financial trustee, and we just want to ensure everything is being managed correctly for her future. Ms. Davies hesitated for a moment, citing client confidentiality. I pressed gently. Of course. But the trust was established by my grandmother for all of her grandchildren. As a direct beneficiary of her will, I believe I have a right to ensure her wishes are being honored for all parties involved. My calm, authoritative tone, perhaps honed by years of defending my research, seemed to work. She agreed to show me the summary statement for Jessica's fund without revealing specific transaction details. She printed a single page and handed it to me. I looked at the number at the bottom of the page under Current Balance. It was $754.32. The original amount, with interest, should have been well over $50,000. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. The fund had been systematically drained over the past 2 years, with the final large withdrawal made just 1 month ago, right around the time Brenda would have been booking the country club for the engagement party. Brenda hadn't just been dismissive of my life's work. She had been actively funding her daughter's superficial lifestyle by liquidating the educational legacy our grandmother had left for her. She had stolen from her own child to pay for a party. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. She had preached about building a legacy while she was actively destroying one. This was it. This was the leverage I needed. It wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. It was about justice for my grandmother's memory. The plan began to form in my mind, elegant and precise. It wouldn't be about destroying Brenda, but about redirecting the family's focus towards something that truly mattered. I would use her own weapon, the public performance, against her. And I would do it in my grandmother's name. The information about Jessica's depleted trust fund was a heavy weight, but it was also the key. My anger was no longer a hot, emotional reaction. It had cooled into a strategic resolve. Brenda had used my grandmother's money, money intended for education and a stable future, to fund a spectacle of superficiality. My response would be to create something permanent, something meaningful, using the very thing Brenda and my family so casually dismissed: my intellect and my connection to the academic world. My plan was simple in concept, but required meticulous execution. I would use my own money, a combination of my modest savings and the remaining funds from my own educational trust, to establish a new scholarship at my university. It wouldn't be just any scholarship. It would be the Dr. Alina Vance Memorial Scholarship for Women in STEM, named after my grandmother, the science teacher who had inspired me. The scholarship would be specifically designed to support first-generation female students pursuing degrees in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. Young women who, like me, might not have a family that understood or supported their journey. It was the perfect counter-narrative to Brenda's worldview. She celebrated a woman securing her future through a man. I would celebrate and financially support women securing their own futures through their intelligence and hard work. It was a tribute to my grandmother's true legacy and a direct rebuke to Brenda's theft of it. For the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into the project with the same intensity I had applied to my dissertation. I met with the university's development office, who were thrilled with the idea. They helped me draft the charter, define the eligibility criteria, and set up the endowment fund. I wanted the scholarship to be announced at a significant university event to give it the weight and public recognition it deserved. The development officer suggested the annual Innovators Gala, a major fundraising dinner that honored faculty for their research achievements and celebrated the school's leading donors. It was perfect. It was the kind of event Brenda, with her obsession with status, would understand and respect. The gala was in 1 month. This gave me a timeline. The next step was to secure the stage for my confrontation. I knew that simply announcing the scholarship wasn't enough. For the full impact to land, the family had to be there to witness it. This was the trickiest part. How could I get Aunt Brenda, the woman who scoffed at my hobby, to attend a university gala celebrating academic achievement? The answer, I realized, was to use her own vanity against her. I had the university's event coordinator send a special, personalized invitation to my aunt and uncle, as well as my parents. The invitation didn't come from me. It came from the office of the university president. It stated that as part of the evening's celebration of innovation, they were honoring a select group of family members who have been instrumental in the success of their star researchers. It mentioned that their niece, Dr. Lucy Vance, had been recognized for her groundbreaking contributions and that the university wished to acknowledge the family that supported her. It was a fabrication, of course, but a plausible one. The bait was the public recognition. The idea that she would be honored at a prestigious event in front of wealthy and influential people would be irresistible to Brenda. It played directly into her need for social validation. As I waited for her RSVP, I took care of the final piece of my plan. I contacted the law firm again, this time with a formal written request for a full accounting of Jessica's trust fund, co-signed by Mark. We stated that we had reason to believe the funds had been mismanaged by the trustee, Brenda Vance, and that we were formally requesting an investigation on Jessica's behalf. We sent a copy of the letter directly to Brenda via registered mail. This was the pressure point. The legal letter would arrive just a few days before the gala, putting her in an impossible position. She would be cornered, knowing that her financial misconduct was about to be exposed. Her appearance at the gala would no longer be just about vanity, it would be about trying to manage the fallout. 2 days after the invitations went out, Aunt Brenda called me. Her voice was syrupy sweet, a tone she used when she wanted something. "Lucy, darling, I just received the most lovely invitation from your university. We are so proud of you. To be honored like that, it's just wonderful. Of course, we'll be there." I played along, pretending to be surprised and pleased. "Oh, that's great, Aunt Brenda. It will be a special night." I didn't mention the scholarship. I didn't mention the trust fund. I let her walk right into the trap I had so carefully set. My parents also confirmed they would attend, sounding genuinely proud and a little bewildered by the official invitation. Everything was falling into place. The stage was set. The actors were all confirmed. Brenda thought she was attending a celebration of her own perceived importance. In reality, she was about to become a spectator at an event that would honor everything she devalued and expose everything she pretended to be. The Innovators Gala would be her day of reckoning. The night of the Innovators Gala, I felt a calm I hadn't experienced since before my graduation. I was in my element. The room was filled with the brightest minds from the university, professors, researchers, and philanthropists who understood the value of knowledge. This was my world, and for the first time, I was bringing my family into it on my terms. I wore a simple, elegant black gown, a stark contrast to the sequined monstrosity Aunt Brenda arrived in. She looked around the grand ballroom with a proprietary air, as if she were assessing the property value. My parents looked nervous but proud, while my uncle seemed deeply uncomfortable. They found their assigned table, which I had arranged to be near the front. Mark was already there, giving me a supportive nod. Brenda was in full networking mode, introducing herself to the university dean and the president, no doubt mentioning her brilliant niece, the doctor. She was playing her part perfectly. The legal letter about the trust fund had been delivered to her 2 days prior. I could see the subtle strain behind her painted-on smile. She was on edge, but her ego wouldn't allow her to back out of what she believed was an evening honoring her. She thought she could control the narrative. She had no idea that the narrative was already written, and she was merely a character in it. Halfway through the dinner, the university president, Dr. Albright, took the stage to begin the awards presentation. She spoke about the importance of research, of pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, and of the vital role philanthropy plays in supporting the next generation of innovators. Then, she shifted her speech. Tonight, we also want to celebrate a new initiative, one that was born from the passion and dedication of one of our own rising stars. It is a story about legacy and what it truly means to build something that lasts. My heart began to beat a little faster. This was the moment. Earlier this year, Dr. Albright continued, Dr. Lucy Vance from our biology department completed her PhD with distinction. Her work in cellular communication has already opened up new avenues for potential therapeutic treatments. She paused and gestured towards me. There was a polite round of applause. I could see Brenda preening at our table, smiling as if she were the one being praised. But Dr. Vance's contribution doesn't end in the lab, Dr. Albright said, her voice filling the room. She came to us with a proposal to honor the person who first inspired her scientific journey, her grandmother, Eleanor Vance, a dedicated high school science teacher for over 30 years. At the mention of her mother's name, both Brenda and my mom looked up, confused. In her grandmother's name, Dr. Vance has established a new endowment at this university. She has used her own inheritance, money her grandmother set aside for her education, to fund the Dr. Eleanor Vance Memorial Scholarship for Women in STEM. A graphic appeared on the large screens behind the stage, showing a beautiful photo of my grandmother next to the official title of the scholarship. The room erupted in genuine, heartfelt applause. I glanced at my family's table. My mother's eyes were filled with tears, her hand covering her mouth. My father was staring at the screen, a look of profound understanding dawning on his face. Aunt Brenda was frozen, her smile gone, replaced by a mask of utter shock and disbelief. Her face was pale. Dr. Albright wasn't finished. This scholarship will provide a full ride for a deserving young woman entering the sciences, ensuring that financial barriers do not stand in the way of intellectual promise. It is a testament to the fact that the greatest legacy we can leave is not one of wealth or status, but one of opportunity and knowledge. She then invited me to the stage to say a few words. I walked to the podium, my hands steady. I looked out at the audience, my eyes eventually landing on my family's table. Thank you, Dr. Albright, I began, my voice clear and strong. My grandmother, Eleanor Vance, believed that education was the most powerful tool a person could possess. She taught me to be curious, to ask questions, and to never be afraid of being the smartest person in the room. I paused, letting the words sink in. She left a small educational fund for each of her grandchildren, hoping to give us a head start in building our own futures. I am proud to use what remains of my portion to honor her memory and to invest in a future she would have been proud of, a future built on substance, integrity, and hard work. I didn't need to mention the stolen money. I didn't need to call Brenda out directly. The implication was clear to everyone at that table. I was using my inheritance to fund education. She had used her daughters to fund a party. I had created a legacy. She had squandered one. I concluded my speech, received a standing ovation, and walked back to my seat. The rest of the gala was a blur. People came up to congratulate me, to share stories of their own mentors, to praise the scholarship initiative, but my focus was on the silent drama unfolding at my family's table. My mother was openly crying now, but they were tears of pride. My father patted my arm, his eyes shining. "Lucy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. That was incredible. We're so proud of you." It was the validation I had been waiting for my entire life. Aunt Brenda said nothing. She sat rigid in her chair, her face a thunderous mask. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone. The public honor she had craved had turned into a public humiliation, delivered not with a shout, but with a quiet act of profound generosity that exposed her own shallowness for all to see. When the gala ended, she and my uncle were the first to leave, scurrying out without a word. The confrontation was over. I hadn't raised my voice, I hadn't made a single accusation out loud, but I had one. I had reclaimed my family's narrative, redefining what was truly worth celebrating. The aftermath of the gala was not explosive, but it was decisive. It was like a controlled demolition, where a flawed structure is brought down precisely to make way for something new and stronger. Aunt Brenda never spoke to me again. The day after the gala, she sent me a single, vitriolic text message calling me a sanctimonious, ungrateful brat who had humiliated her. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The legal inquiry into Jessica's trust fund moved forward. Faced with indisputable evidence of her borrowing, Brenda was forced to liquidate some of her underperforming real estate assets at a loss to pay the money back, with interest. The financial strain, combined with the social humiliation, was devastating for her. Her carefully curated image was shattered. Word travels fast in the world of high-end real estate, and the story of her misusing her own daughter's education fund did not paint the picture of a trustworthy agent. Her business suffered. She had built her castle on sand, and my quiet act of truth had been the tide that washed it all away. Jessica was understandably horrified when she learned what her mother had done. She called me, crying, apologizing for the party, for everything. For the first time, I saw her not as my rival, but as another victim of her mother's obsessive ambition. "I had no idea, Lucy," she sobbed. "She told me the money for the party was from a bonus she got. I never would have let her do it if I knew she took my trust fund." Our conversation was long and difficult, but it was honest. She admitted that her engagement was already falling apart. Kyle was not prepared for the reality of her having no family money and actual debt. They broke up a few months later. Stripped of her mother's financial backing, Jessica had to face reality. She quit her aspiring actress dream and got a full-time job. It was hard for her, but over time, a new, more resilient person began to emerge. Our relationship, once defined by a manufactured rivalry, began to slowly heal, rebuilt on a foundation of shared truth. The most significant change, however, was with my parents. The gala had been a profound awakening for them. Seeing my achievement validated by an entire community of respected professionals forced them to reevaluate the narrow definition of success they had learned from Brenda. My mom called me the next day, her voice full of remorse. "Lucy, we are so sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "We let Brenda's voice become the loudest one in the family. We saw how hard you worked, but we didn't understand it, so we didn't celebrate it. We were wrong. What you did last night, honoring Grandma like that, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." My dad got on the phone and echoed the sentiment. From that day on, everything was different. They started asking questions about my work, not just polite inquiries, but questions showing genuine interest. They read articles I sent them. My dad even tried to pronounce the names of the proteins I was studying. They hung my diploma in the most prominent spot in their living room. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world. They were finally seeing me, not the weird, academic daughter, but Lucy, the scientist. They were proud, and this time, they knew how to show it. My brother Mark, my constant ally, was thrilled. "You didn't just get revenge, Lucy," he told me over dinner one night. "You performed a course correction on the entire family." He was right. My goal had started as a reaction to my own pain, but it had evolved into something more constructive. I hadn't just torn Brenda down, I had built something better in its place. A year later, the first recipient of the Dr. Alina Vance Memorial Scholarship was chosen. Her name was Maria, a brilliant young woman from a low-income family who dreamed of becoming a neuroscientist. I met her at a university luncheon, and as I listened to her talk about her passion for research, her eyes shining with excitement and gratitude, I felt a sense of fulfillment that dwarfed any satisfaction I could have gotten from simple revenge. This was my legacy. This was my family's new legacy. It wasn't about parties or rings. It was about empowering a brilliant young mind to change the world. My life is quieter now, but it's full. My work in the lab is progressing, my relationship with my parents and brother is stronger than ever, and I'm even tentatively starting to date someone, a fellow researcher who thinks my passion for cellular biology is the most fascinating thing in the world. I built a new foundation, not just for my family, but for myself, one based on the values my grandmother taught me: integrity, intelligence, and the quiet, unshakable power of a legacy that truly matters.